everybody's talking about the good old days, right? Everybody, the good old days, the good old days. Well, let's talk about the good old days.
There's nothing new under the sun. Everything is a derivative of something else, so nothing is truly novel. The word original is defined as something not dependent on other people's ideas, yet all ideas are byproducts of outside influences. Originality then isn't the creation of something out of nothing, it's the reframing of what already exists. We are mimetic creatures after all, but cultural production today seems increasingly confined to this nostalgic feedback loop, endlessly recycling the past. Nostalgia has become a for-profit industry, and we're trapped in the belly of this arbitrary cultural undoing, a nostalgic Ouroboros devouring itself in a constant loop of readapting, reattempting, recreating, and redefining. Industries produce, audiences consume, and both parties feed into this symbiotic relationship. As a result, nostalgia is heavily leveraged to sustain the insatiable system. This isn't new though, because nostalgia has always thrived on the cyclical nature of trends. Pop culture critics often think of time as linear, but retro reminds us that time in cultural production is anything but. As James Laver explained in his 1937 book, Taste and Fashion, trends follow a predictable life cycle. What's daring one year becomes smart the next, only to be seen as hideous a decade later. Eventually, 100 to 150 years after its time, it's romanticized or even beautiful. This cyclical nature of taste cultivates the illusion of progress, but in reality, it's just a return, a pattern that industries exploit to make the antiquated feel chic again. But like any other commodity in our all-consuming capitalist profit machine, this overconsumption of nostalgia has a cost. Why take a chance to create something fresh when you can just remake something people are already guaranteed to love? So the heyday-stricken adults and the poser brain-rotted youth can voraciously feast upon your product, padding the bottom line for another quarter. Embracing influence is one thing because we're shaped by what we love, but using the past as a creative crutch makes innovation take a backseat to what's profitable and culture becomes stagnant. What we're left with is a series of sequels, remakes, and retro trends that feel more and more shallow. Cultural production is stuck looking backwards, recycling what was instead of engaging fully with what is. We've traded experimentation for familiarity, and this reflects how nostalgia has shifted from a source of personal comfort to a powerful tool, one that industries wield to reinforce revenue over creativity. Nostalgia is soothing, sure, it feels safe in a world of uncertainty. Project 2025, rich men blatantly dog whistling a convicted felon holding one of, if not the highest seat in the United States of America. We're living in some ominous times. But I have to ask, by clinging to nostalgia, are we preserving culture or slowly suffocating it? Furthermore, is our obsession with nostalgia a symptom of cultural decline or just a refusal to let go of what's familiar? So what is nostalgia? The term was coined in 1688 by Dr. Johannes Hofer, who originally defined it as a medical diagnosis. It combines the Greek words nostos, return home, and algos, pain. Back then, nostalgia was believed to cause fainting, high fever, and even death. But by the 1870s, doctors stopped treating nostalgia as a literal disease, recognizing it as an emotional state, a longing for the past. This yearning is often selective, focusing only on what feels reassuring, and that's exactly why nostalgia has become such a powerful cultural and political tactic. As heartwarming as nostalgia may feel, it can be used for manipulation. Dr. Christine Bacho states that
most of the research suggests that nostalgia is aligned with very soft pro-social emotions.
But she also acknowledges that in certain contexts, nostalgia can trap people, keeping them focused on an idealized past rather than engaging with the present.
Data suggests that nostalgia facilitates our understanding of meaning in life. And so in a way, when we look at all the reboots and people going back to the past, it might be telling us that people aren't 100% satisfied with the current lifestyle. There's something that might be missing.
So as a society, we too can collectively fall into nostalgia's trap, and it isn't inherently bad as nostalgia connects us to ourselves and to each other. But this can be abused, turning it into a device for rejection or control, where selective and distorted memories of the past fuel present-day agendas. Think of movements like Donald Trump's Make America Great Again campaign, the tradwife resurgence, and the rise of alt-right and white nationalist groups among younger generations. These movements reshape the past, selectively editing history to push a particular vision. But this pattern isn't just political, it's everywhere. Fashion revives decade-old trends, movies and TV rely on sequels, remakes, and spin-offs to keep audiences engaged, while brands flood marketing campaigns with sentimental callbacks. Even in music, nostalgia dominates, whether through interpolations, samples, or full-scale recreations of past sounds. So are we running out of colors, flavors, and textures, or are there ways to invent without solely sacrificing your creative libido as an offering to the altar of profit-driven corporate greed? While I don't think we're running out of ideas despite mainstream media feeling stagnant and like everything's been done twice over, I think there's a few overlapping cultural, economic, and psychological factors occurring that have us in the hands of commodified nostalgia and subsequently in this cultural drought. First off, capitalism. When is that not the problem? Corporate risk aversion and profit-driven art makes creativity subservient to profitability. Because of this, corporate stockholders pressure to deliver quick, dare I say dirty, returns. In 2023, when the Barbie movie was released, there was a great degree of hype surrounding it. It was so popular that Mattel, the maker of the toy, greenlit a plethora of other reboots. Move over, Marvel Cinematic Universe, because there's a new MCU in town. Allegedly, there are 45 films in development, but only 14 have been announced so far. Say it with me, class. Capitalism. Studios and corporations stick to the tried and true, relying on nostalgia to tap into consumers' memories, because the sweetness of nostalgia lies in remembering the good times of our lives. But there's always bitterness underneath, because deep down, we know those moments are gone forever. The irreversibility of time means we can never truly return.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
But revisiting those memories provides a kind of fleeting peacefulness, a way to cope with that longing. So corporations then close that unrequited distance by capitalizing off this emotional conflict by selling you a cure, which is a nostalgic fantasy, but it's your link to the past. Packaging nostalgia as a product to soothe the algos, the pain or bitterness of the present, with the nostos, the return home or the sweetness of memory. The system incentivizes this codification because it carries less financial risk. Therefore, ideas, no matter how ingenious, are seen as too risky because they don't guarantee immediate profits. How many more Fast and Furious movies do we need? My God. Despite the bad faith argument that there'd be no innovation if it weren't for capitalism, it should be noted that capitalism is driven by the profit motive and not some instinctive drive to innovate, because, say it with me, class, if something is profitable, it will be produced. Rule 34. Profitability inhabiting the forefront results in a demand for more and more content, which feeds into my next point: overstimulation and the instant gratification cycle. Thanks to technology like social media and streaming platforms, we live in an age of unending choice, and it's easy to become overwhelmed by the abysmal nature digital media has evolved into. The endless stream of content has fueled a quenchless demand that often outweighs the supply, and this demand shows up in various ways across different media forms. Online content has undergone what some call the Mr. Beastification of entertainment, where creators optimize for algorithms rather than people. Oversaturated thumbnails, hyper-fast pacing, louder audio, and attention-grabbing edits aren't just stylistic choices anymore. They're necessary tactics for survival in an attention economy driven by engagement metrics. On the other hand, movies and TV fall victim to what some might call inshtification, content bloat, or narrative drift. Great works, once driven by a clear creative vision, begin to lose their rhythm as they're stretched thin or altered to meet platform demands or to keep audiences hooked. The Walking Dead is a prime example. What started as a gripping survival drama eventually became an exhausting, never-ending loop of repetitive arcs, all to keep the franchise alive. With instant gratification becoming the norm, audiences are steadily conditioned to consume harder, faster, and stronger with less patience for the anomalous. This ties directly into the algorithmic influence on creativity. According to SproutSocial.com, in social media, algorithms are rules, signals, and data that govern the platform's operation. These algorithms determine how content is filtered, ranked, selected, and recommended to users. In some ways, algorithms influence our choices and what we see on social media. Every social media platform comprises a mix of users with different preferences. Without a filtering system, users must navigate through a flood of posts, which can be overwhelming. This is where algorithms come into play. Much like traditional industries, algorithms prioritize what's already been proven to work. These systems are designed to provide a stream of consistent stimulation, triggering dopamine responses and reshaping previously set neurological pathways. They cater to content that generates the most engagement, rewarding whatever keeps users scrolling, clicking, and reacting, whether through curiosity, outrage, or mindless habit. Creators are then encouraged to replicate successful formats, which is why you hear tons of them discussing burnout. Despite their hardest, it truly feels feels as if their best isn't enough for the content-numbed user, and therefore it doesn't meet the demand of the volatile algorithm. Content creation may be easier than the average job, but it comes with its own set of unique challenges, which can be exhausting in and of itself. And when you're penalized for not meeting the community guidelines as well as the demands of an audience, there's an increased probability of you producing safer content for higher metrics, especially when it's your primary source of income. The problem here is the pace of modern life being extremely fast for both creators and viewers, so people are exhausted. And again, in this state, it's much simpler to passively manufacture and consume the familiar. Imagine two things for me. Number one, imagine you're a newly graduated student, freshly indebted to your lovely education system, without the luxury of having the Nepo baby starter pack or just a nice cushion of familial connection. You're not worried about developing a sophisticated palate. You're trying to survive. You're trying to figure out how you about to find food, water, shelter, and space. Number two, now you're a different person. You're a unionized writer, heavy on the unionized. Imagine being told you have to do a script writing assignment with 1,000,001 stipulations right now. What would be more unmistakable? Rewriting Cinderella or making a whole newfangled story from scratch? The former, most likely. This capitalistic system feeds off exhaustion. If it can't break your will to fight back against it, it'll sap all your energy instead. And in that state of fatigue, rewriting what's recognizable feels less like a choice and more like a necessity. Exhaustion becomes the perfect instrument for stifling a visionary's power and keeping creators trapped in a cycle of endless remakes. Now I know what you're thinking.
Stupid YouTubers always fear-mongering and oversimplifying. There's actually some really good stuff out there if you just divest from mainstream media and not be a sheep that follows the in crowd. Plus it's called popular culture for a reason. What do you expect? If you want the good shit, you gotta go indie.
Which begs the question, is it really a drought, or are y'all niggas just lazy and fail to notice smaller developments? I'm sure there are a substantial amount of inventive things going on. Independent creators, smaller studios, and even online communities doing amazing work. But the thing is, the system wasn't designed as a voice for the many, but for the few rather. Therefore, those voices are not being amplified in the way that they probably definitely deserve. The system, and I know I keep referring to the quote unquote system, and you're probably like, what the f? But if you know, you know, has been built to reward what's remunerative. So the little guys rarely get the spotlight. As hypocritical as it may sound, I couldn't name anything independent or underground if my life depended on it. And honestly, I don't think I'm alone in that. When so much of what we see is algorithmically filtered, curated, and regurgitated, real discovery takes effort, and that's kind of the point. The system doesn't make it easy. I mean, even on TikTok, I catch myself scrolling past videos with barely any engagement, but the second I see one that already has thousands of likes and comments, I'm way more likely to stop and watch. It's not intentional, but it's telling. Scrolling is done for the hell of it, and most of us rarely ever engage with social media consciously or intentionally, which is exactly how indie creators and underground media get buried. Yeah, I engage with content, but I'm not an avid media consumer, and I feel like there's a difference between chronic consumption and active discovery, and the system thrives on that gap. All in all, I don't have all the answers. I'm just a girl with an internet connection and opinions, but this system needs to be transformed. In order to truly rebuild a better, more creative landscape, we have to dismantle the structures that prioritize money over ingenuity. Otherwise, even the most brilliant ideas remain on the fringes. So where do we go from here? If this capitalistic system feeds off exhaustion and prioritizes profit over creativity, how do we break free? The answer isn't in some overnight revolution, but small, intentional shifts in how we consume and engage with media. We don't have to swear off mainstream entertainment entirely, but we can be more mindful of what we give our time and attention to. Instead of letting algorithms decide everything we see, we can actively seek out smaller, independent creators. Instead of scrolling just for the hell of it, we can engage with work that actually excites us. And instead of waiting for the industry to change on its own, we can demand better, supporting creatives directly, advocating for fair pay, and pushing back against the culture of endless reboots. None of us are superheroes, and we don't have to be. Being aware and shedding light on a problem is enough, but what we choose to do with that knowledge, that's up to us. In conclusion, touch grass. I know that's very tongue-in-cheek internet humor, but there's so much going on in our communities beyond the confines of our devices. For example, one of my favorite ways to find new music, eccentric trinkets, or meeting new people is going to the library, thrift store, or some random nook downtown and exploring my environment. Another thing I started doing since becoming an adult is exploring my hometown or the next city over, because growing up somewhere makes things feel routine. And I don't know about y'all, but other cities in my state always felt off limits because I never had a reason to be there. But now I do, because free will is reason enough. In conclusion, free will, support creatives. Love y'all. Catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.